Tips from Trestle is brought to you by eMenuChoice Point of Sale and Clark Food Service Equipment. Welcome to Tips from Trestle, the Senior Living Food and Hospitality Podcast. This podcast explores the senior living industry with a unique focus on food, hospitality, and the community experience. I'm your host, Aaron Fish. My goal for this podcast: educate, inform, and inspire leaders in senior living. How? By bringing the resident and customer experience to the front of mind in our industry. We should bring the passionate spirit of food and hospitality to everything that we do and everyone we serve each and every day. So what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. Today's guest on Tips from Trestle is Chris Kincaid. Chris found his calling because he was close with his great-grandmother while growing up, and after providing care for her while she recovered from a stroke, he knew he wanted to serve seniors professionally. He has now been in the senior living industry for 28 years, overseeing the operations of senior living campuses, AL, and memory care company portfolios of up to 27 locations and home care operations. He co-founded Trinity Senior Management in 2022 and has transformed it into TruNorth Management that works with a variety of industry experts who provide the highest possible services and support to their clients. Chris, thanks for joining me today on Tips from Trestle.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Aaron.
Yeah, so I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about TruNorth. Obviously, full disclosure, Trestle Hospitality Concepts, my company, is a network partner, which we're definitely going to get into and talk about. And so, but because of the way you have approached this, I think TruNorth is a unique kind of management company. And so, I guess as we talk a little bit about that, the first thing that pops into mind is like, why another management company, right? There's so many out there, and everybody is doing management and trying to take advantage of the market opportunities. And so, what was your kind of driving force behind developing TruNorth?
I think the biggest driving force is we owe it to the seniors and we owe it to potential clients to provide a true bespoke service, something that we can customize, we can scale and support, whether it's a small rural community through the mid market and even into the higher end markets. And we even have the bandwidth for CCRC supported management.
Yeah, and you're mentioning the markets and the focus. And when we initially talked about the True North model and we were starting to have conversations about building a partnership, the model that you were creating intrigued me. And so when you think about the markets that you're really wanting to focus on, can you go in a little bit more about that and why it's not just let's find those urban pockets and try and compete with all the big box management companies out there?
Well, I think the best way to describe it is our industry is built on the person centered care, getting to know the resident, getting to know the family, and just as important, getting to know the staff of each community. Well, that's great for the local operation, but what about the management company, the large corporations who provide the support and services? Now, why can't we go in and do something very similar? Just as when a new resident moves into a client community, there's usually a life story and different things that can be done to really learn that resident, learn their background, learn their history, learn their family. Well, we need to be able to provide that to clients as well. Again, whether it's a smaller rural community or a larger upscale in a metropolitan area, each one is unique. Each one has their own, positives and negatives, support services, and so forth. So, what I have found is there's just a lot of cookie cutter management companies out there. Not all of them. There's some
Right.
really good ones that will sit down and listen to and understand their client
Mhm.
But we try to take it a little bit deeper than just the surface, the standard support services. Try to learn exactly what's important to that owner operator, whether it's a passive investor, an active investor that wants to have their hands in the operations. Perfectly fine. We come in and pretty well surround ourselves and surround them with the support needed just for that client.
Yeah, and one of the things when we first met and I learned about your background, you spend a lot of time in smaller markets, in rural markets with your operations and your oversight. And that was one of the driving forces that I really latched onto was, you know, the industry right now is really having kind of this awareness of how do we serve middle markets? How do we serve secondary markets? How are we going to be successful in doing this, right? We kind of know what's going to happen in the big markets. We've seen that kind of wash, rinse, repeat. A lot of operators have that down. But like you mentioned, like these owners that are maybe smaller or one-off mom and pop types or have 2 or 3 locations, but they're all, you know, East Texas or Southeast Kansas or, these places where you don't normally think of senior living and assisted living and memory care. They have those needs too. And so kind of the way you constructed the business model for True North around that has really kind of, I think has a uniqueness of its own.
It really does. And that's just it. Our illustration for True North is essentially, it looks like a clock face. And each one of what you would see normally with the numbers on a clock face is replaced with a subject matter expert. I mean, we have CRM company, we have risk assessment and compliance, we have HR, clinical compliance, physical plants, cleaning services. I happen to know a guy who provides great dining service, and culinary, sales and marketing, you name it, whatever the need is, whatever the operational support that's needed, we can bring those people to the table. We already have a full list of vetted subject matter experts, such as Aaron Fish with Trestle Hospitality, who, based on the need of that particular client, and let me give you an example. We have a client we're about to take on here in the Nashville area. They're a smaller mom and pop assisted living community. Um, if we were a standard operating management company with all of our W-2 employees in place, we have a lot of overhead and a
Mhm.
lot of overhead that we're going to need to support, by way of payroll and all of those things. And so the likelihood of saying yes to just about anything is high.
Yeah.
The likelihood of saying yes to a small community that might have very tight margins is very low. However, our illustration is a great example through these subject matter experts that we have this, again, this operating relationship, this contractual relationship for them to come in. And if they are only needed for a small piece of training or conference calls or support system, then we can provide that. When we sat down with this client and prepared to, to determine what is it we need to support them, we just asked them, tell me about the life story of your community. Tell me about the culture, the staff, how you all interact with each other. And then more importantly, what is it specifically that you're looking for from a management company and even more so a support system? And then we simply take that, customize it, and provide those services only at the level, time frame, scope needed to provide the support for that particular community. 18 apartment assisted living. It could be a 380 apartment CCRC, everything in between. Simply can scale up and down based on the need.
Yeah, and that's where, you coined these consultants as enterprise network partners, right? And like you said, we're all coming in and filling a gap, whether in our specialty, our area of expertise. And so you kind of alluded to it there a little bit about why this consultant-based model is the route you've gone with the company versus a more traditional management company. And for me, one of the things that I always think about is, well, one of the challenges I have as a consultant is, you know, the the value perspective of owners, operators, investors, right? It's like, well, I can just bring in a management company. I don't need to have a specialty consultant necessarily. And so we find ourselves out here as consultants sometimes struggling. Like, we're not trying to, gouge the industry. We're trying to find our sweet spot and our best way to support and grow the industry and provide the best services for those that are living with us. And I think being able to do that in the model you've created makes sense. And there's a lot of value to the smaller operator, like you alluded to, in being able to do that.
Technology continues to drive changes in senior care, and that includes food service. eMenuChoice is an award-winning point-of-service application for managing the dining function in senior living communities. This mobile, touchscreen-enabled software enhances the dining experience for residents while streamlining processes for staff. The flexibility and functionality of eMenuChoice makes it an effective solution for any type of senior living environment, from independent and assisted living to skilled nursing facilities. It works for production kitchens or restaurant-style service with options for per meal or a la carte pricing, and accommodates a variety of payments, including bill to account, meal credits, and credit cards. Created by a senior care provider with more than a century of experience serving older adults, eMenuChoice eliminates communication barriers between staff and residents while enabling person-centered choices and greater resident satisfaction. eMenuChoice, transforming dining for senior living.
Well, exactly. And, I think sometimes people will stand back a little bit and say, well, why do I just want to hire consultants? Well, why wouldn't you? What's the difference between a standard management company and their W-2 employees who have the experience and background in their particular areas versus bringing in a consultant group who they have a lot riding on making sure that they provide a top-notch quality service or specialty. So, you know, there's reputation riding on it. There's the quality outcomes to the various clients that are riding on it. I think just by the sheer fact that a consultant wants to come into an industry, make it better, and at the same time build their brand, build their reputation, they're hungry and wanting to ensure that there's a quality product, quality service that can be provided, and again, to whatever size of community that comes along.
Yeah, and I think that the term consultant is, and this is why I like the way you phrase it as enterprise network partners, the ENPs, because yes, we're all consulting. This is the job that we're doing. We're running our own companies and businesses. But I think the term consultant sometimes gets a negative connotation to it just because it is about, you think about the big consulting companies, right? They come in, they assess, they give a report, they tell you what to do, and then they leave and collect a check, right? Where in this instance, it's different because we're not just coming in, dropping a report saying, here's the things you need to do to be successful. Our goal is to live and breathe as a part of the operation. What do we need to do? Right. Like, like you mentioned, is it a quarterly training webinar that someone like myself may do on food service and food safety and sanitation for these small operators? Or maybe it's, documenting a care plan the right way, whatever it might be. We're coming in as those industry partners, those network partners to provide that. And I think that's why the way you put this all together makes so much sense and why this business model is going to, I personally think, have a lot of opportunity and take off here in the next months and years.
Yes, absolutely. I think we have a tendency to again put management companies, resources in general into one common box. And if we have an opportunity, regardless of where the community is located, to provide there's what's the statistics? There's 33,000 assisted living communities in the United States, an average of 35 apartments.
Yeah.
And these are approximate numbers. Well, how many of these average 35 apartments and less have any sort of support, any sort of system in place? Even if, again, if it's just basic webinar, reading blogs, having some type, um, of support system. I know I keep going back to support system,
Yeah.
but I've just run across so many communities, and we all agree in this industry that so many of them are just kind of out there on an island.
Yeah.
Does it make sense to ignore them? Absolutely not. Do we have an opportunity through, again, just through virtual trainings, through these webinars and so forth, to come in and provide something for them? Just basic sanitation, cleanliness, and temperatures for dining service. I mean, how often do these smaller rural communities have that as an option? And they usually don't.
Yeah.
So unless it is an owner who is active in their state organization and seeks out these other resources, again, they're on an island and we can come in and help. We don't have to have boots on the ground 100% of the time in a community
Yeah.
to still be able to meet the need, provide the training, offer support. Usually it's just a phone call away. We can get on a group chat if we need to. There's so many ways to do that everybody found out through the pandemic. It's kind of funny. There's so much talk about, well, since the pandemic has happened, there's all of everybody just says conference calls or webinars or web-based calls. Well, in this industry, we've been doing it for decades. I've been in regional and divisional positions where I worked at home and communicated primarily with all of the people in my realm of responsibility through conference calls, video calls, and so forth. And for 25 years. So
Yeah.
it's not anything new in this industry. It's just making sure that we capitalize on that as much as.
Yeah. And I think about, I have a community that I work with, 32 memory care units, right? It's kind of fits right into that wheelhouse, what you're talking about. And early on, there was a lot of hand holding, but now, we talk a couple times a month. There's emails back and forth on various different things. We'll do some trainings probably 2 or 3 times a year. And it's a perfect fit for that community. And from my standpoint, it's an easily replicatable service and support, like you said, that those smaller communities definitely need.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And
we
there's
could,
not a lot of experience out there with the smaller communities. I'm sorry, I didn't mean.
no, you're right. And I think that's the other thing is that it's just, you've got to have lived in those operations, have had experience with them to really know how
Yeah,
the differences are there. And so what I want
exactly.
we've been talking about like the operation and the structure of True North, but I wanted to get into the compass assessment because this is a piece that I think is really interesting because not only is it going to help us as, network partners better understand the operations of a community, but there's another piece of this that I'd love to get into that is more geared towards owners, investors, and how they can take advantage of that. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about Compass and how it's the kind of value it's going to bring in assessing a property.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Compass came about from a 3-day meeting that we had last summer in Boston. I flew in and spent couple of days there with some of the network partners, strategizing and getting our foundation in place, and then start building on that. What came of that unexpectedly was, well, wait a second. Here's an opportunity where we can come in with some of our network partners who already are employed and go to different communities and provide due diligent research on those communities, representing a potential owner, a commercial bank, a REIT, whatever lending institution it is. They usually want some type of information on that community. So they want to know the physical plan and the systems. Sometimes these lending institutions, investors, and so forth, will also want to find out a little bit on the clinical, the regulatory. How were the last 2 or 3 years worth of state inspections and the deficiencies that they receive? That's very important too. Usually that's the extent. A lot of people don't understand that you can have a solid physical plant and you can have a good quality outcome when it comes to clinical and regulatory. But what about the operations? What about the occupancy, the sales and marketing piece? Now, there's a number of different pieces that need to go into truly understanding an asset before you buy it. Or in some cases, the owners themselves don't want to sell it. They have some operational issues going on, but they can't put the finger on what exactly that is. Well, here we come with Compass, and Compass is exactly that, COMP assessment. So the C is clinical for quality of care, regulatory, risk management. How did they do on their last 3 years worth of inspections? What types of deficiencies did they receive? And did they fix them right out of the gate? Then there's O, the operations piece, financials. How's their AR? How's their AP? Are they sitting on uncollected rents? Have they attempted to get this money? What's the staff turnover? What's the staff satisfaction? What's the resident and family satisfaction? These are important pieces that, performers are put together all day long based on what they might think is a good physical plan or a good clinical operation. But these other things make a big difference too. And so
Yeah.
this performer could be set up to maybe purchase the product and get to a break even in 6 to 8 months without finding out what the operational and marketing piece is that could extend it to a year, 18 months, 2 years before break even. They do this based on the information they have, but not on all the information that's available.
Yeah.
So the M is the marketing and sales piece. So what's the reputation of the community? What's their census? How are they doing with trying to get more residents in their lead management process? And then P is fiscal plant. We talked about that. So COMP assessment. That's
Yeah.
our Compass assessment. Again, it's based on real people going in, spending real time, boots on the ground in the communities, getting a full 360, and within just a very short period of time, come back with a full roll-up report, recommendation. And then from there, the client can either say, this is great, this is all I needed. Or if they're not sure exactly how to take the recommendations, implement them, and turn it into a well-oiled machine, then here we come with our management and consulting products to take those items, implement them, and finalize with a great operation.
Yeah. When we first started talking about this assessment, for me, from what I do, it made a ton of sense to be able to go in kind of eyes wide open, because there's been so many times in my career with a new acquisition where you kind of know what's going on, but you don't really have any understanding until day one. And you really get in and, yeah, you've done some, the banks have done their due diligence and everybody kind of says, yeah, this all makes sense. And we know there's some opportunities here and here. But once you get in, you start peeling back, it's like an onion, right? There's so many layers. And I think this compass assessment is really going to help operators dig in and let us show them how they can make this property the best it possibly can be.
Exactly. Everybody talks about this as an industry to get into. It's recession proof. It has an enormously bright future. It doesn't even count the silver tsunami that's coming here within just a short period of time. I mean, we're talking right now today. The industry is so underserved,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. And oh, by the way, the industry is going to need twice the number of apartments within the next 10 to 12 years than it has now. So people are getting into this industry all day long. Multifamily management companies think, oh, well, I can run apartment complexes. Assisted living ought to be real easy. Oh, no, it's not. It
Yeah.
is a different ball game. You've got people who have been successful in other industries, made their money, and now they want to put their money someplace that's really going to grow.
Yeah.
Senior living and senior services is the place to be, but they don't know what they don't know. And
Right.
that's where we come in. They can simply say, I want to get in this industry. I've got X amount of money. I'd like to go buy 3 communities in, Colorado. What do we need to look for? And here we go. That's where Compass comes in. That's where our network partners come in. And then we sit down and just completely surround that person with all the answers they need and a plan to get where they want.
And with so many investor groups getting more and more, I experienced that over the last 5 years, just watching these investor groups get more and more and more wanting to understand, this is going to paint the picture for them and let them know where to start. Even if they work with a different management company or they're trying to create their own and they just want to understand it. I think the assessment's going to really paint a picture so they go in eyes wide open with the operation. So
Exactly.
So Chris, as we wrap up here, obviously we want everybody to learn more about TruNorth. We want to try and work with as many people as possible. Tell our listeners how they can learn more about TruNorth and connect with you and begin conversation about your TruNorth as a management company, the Compass assessment, all these great opportunities to work with us going forward.
Well, there's a number of ways. We always want to be as accessible as possible and respond as quick as possible. So I would say our number one would be our website, and that is the TruNorthCompanies.com. And you get on there, you can see all of our different network partners, their experience and background, and then how we come together to provide that support that person might need. The second thing would be to email. My email is chris.kincaid@thetruenorthcompanies.com. And then finally, give me a call. Just call me directly, 615-295-1379. And I'll talk to you all day long.
So, no, that's great. And just real quick, if listeners are listening to the audio version of this, TruNorth is spelled without the E. So it's TruNorth. So
I'm glad you said that. Yes.
yeah, our listeners on Apple will definitely appreciate that clarification. So, well, Chris, I'm excited with all the things we have going with TruNorth. Obviously, bringing on this next community is going to be exciting. And so I'm looking forward to the growth that we're going to see over the next year or so. And just want to thank you for taking the time to share TruNorth with our listeners.
Absolutely. I can't tell you how appreciative I am. Between your tips from Trestle and cocktails and conversations, I've grown to be quite the follower of Trestle hospitality. That's for sure. So when you asked me to be on, I thought, oh, wow, I'm getting into big time now. So I appreciate it very much. And of course, being a network partner, we have fun, don't we?
Yeah.
We have
It's always a good time. So, well, Chris, thanks for joining us today on Tips from Trestle.
Thank you.
So there it is, everybody. Another one in the books. Thanks again for tuning in. Please follow, like, and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on social media at Tips from Trestle. You can also learn more about the work I do by following me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. And be sure to check out Trestle Hospitality Concepts at www.trestlehospitalityconcepts.com. I'm your host, Aaron Fish, and this has been another episode of Tips from Trestle.